How's it going, everybody? Today, I'm very excited to announce my guest. He's a former All-PSAC conference wide receiver, a former Gannon University standout, and a member of the XFL's DC Defenders. Tyler Palka, how are we doing today, brother?
I'm doing well, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show and look forward to talking to you today, man.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. So, first and foremost, we have to wrap the hometown. Tell us a little bit about your hometown and what makes it so unique.
Yeah, well, I'm actually born and raised in Toledo, Ohio. So I played 3 years at a school called Toledo Whitmer. Uh, Very strong football school, very strong athletic school. I enjoyed every bit of my time there. And then I went my senior year up to Saline because my dad was the high school coach, so I followed him to Saline. I got nothing but love for the entire Saline community, that whole Ann Arbor area. I really enjoyed my year and a half there, and I still coach there in the off season with my dad, and really love it up there. So yeah, nothing but love for both Toledo and Saline, Ann Arbor area, and that's where I'm from. And I rep both of those cities pretty proudly.
Yeah, as you should. So tell us a little bit about your recruiting journey, both, at both schools, really. I mean, whenever your recruiting journey started and how you ended up at Gannon.
Yeah, good question. So I was a quarterback all the way through high school, and I had a pretty good junior year, pretty good senior year number wise, and ended up having a multiple amount of Division II offers from like Saginaw Valley, from Grand Valley State, Wayne State. None of the schools in the PSAC, just because I was a Michigan guy, so more, GLIAC, which is all Great Lakes schools, so Michigan, and ended up taking the offer to Saginaw Valley. I was very excited about it. Saginaw Valley, great football school, great community, all that stuff is great up there. And ended up playing there I was there for, I think about three seasons. So my redshirt freshman year, redshirt sophomore year, then I transferred. And I loved it there, man. I started a handful of games here and there at quarterback, played a lot of games, had a lot of early success. But just had to make a transfer switch. New coach came in, or new offense, kind of switched things up, and decided to open the recruiting process up. And I had 2 years left of eligibility, and ended up having to choose between a school in Michigan called Ferris State, which I was pretty excited about. And then I sent an email to Gannon University just because, honestly, my dad and I sent the email. It was in driving radius to where I'm from. Never had been to Erie, none of that stuff. And then I took a visit to Erie at Gannon University, and I really kind of fell in love with the campus, man. It's, as you know, it's right downtown Erie, Pennsylvania, right on the water. Very proud football school there as well. And, I took the opportunity there. Coach Rzicki was the head coach at the time, Coach Hoig, the offensive coordinator. And I committed, and, I don't regret any second of that decision. I loved my time in Erie.
Yeah, man, we loved having you for sure because, you started off as a quarterback, again, and then you switched to wide receiver as a senior. You had a ton of success. How difficult of a transition was that, and who kind of helped you in that transition?
I would say, that's a good question. I was very proud quarterback guy my whole life. There's no question about it. I loved doing it in high school, loved doing it at Saginaw Valley, loved it at Gannon. Came into Gannon and, was hoping to be the guy there, and ended up, splitting time with a guy by the name who I'm actually close friends with. His name's Zach Phillips. And, my senior year, it was just one of those situations where it's like, man, I could try to be the guy. I could try to split time again. And actually the head coach at the time, Coach Rzicki, came up to me and he said, listen, we got to use your speed. I was fortunate to have a lot of speed, and at the time, a lot of reps under my belt at quarterback, but nothing at receiver. And he said, this was in the spring going into my senior year. He said, we'd love, you can split time. You can do exactly the stuff you did last year, but I would rather have you at Wildcat quarterback. I would rather have you running the ball, running back, rather have you playing wide receiver. I think you should think about that switch, and I'm very close to my family, very close to my dad. And we kind of made the decision that, with 1 year left, probably the best thing to do, because the reality is I didn't want to come off the field ever. So I made that decision. I remember going to Marco Island, Florida. My dad, my brother, we worked out together, and we would work a lot of receiver stuff. My brother plays receiver still in college. And I would call it new skill development day, so I would go down and do some backpedal stuff down in Florida over Christmas break, kind of anticipation for that next season. And then Coach Rzicki was actually my receiver coach. The head coach was the receiver coach, and Coach Hoig was the OC, like I said. And it just worked out well. I was fortunate to have some speed, have some athletic ability, but I really took to those two guys as coaching. And Coach Rzicki, if you know him, he's a very hard-nosed guy. So we were big blockers at receiver. We were expected to make tough catches and do the little things right. And from the beginning of camp, I kind of developed a knack at being able to run routes and being able to get open a little bit without truly knowing how to run routes at the time. It was more just where a guy's at, I'm going to go the opposite, because we had a lot of option type routes at Gannon. So, I was fortunate to have a good year. I mean, we had a very high potented offense. We put up a lot of points. I don't know exactly where we were in the PSEC, but I would say we were in the top 1 or 2 with scoring, and all kinds of different styles of offense and putting up points. And, it was a lot of fun. I ended up having, like you said, I had a good year. It was all PSEC receiver, over 50 catches or so, and just 11 touchdowns total. But I was very fortunate because I think all that stuff prior to kind of helped me reach that maximal potential at receiver. And honestly, playing quarterback in that offense and Coach Hoig's offense was very complex, and it was very pro-like to a quarterback. It helped me understanding that and where the quarterbacks would want me to be and how would I get there. So I really kind of ran with it, and I was just very fortunate for that opportunity and that idea by both Coach Ruzicki and Coach Hoig. And, fortunately 3 years later after college, I'm still playing, and that has to do with those guys directly. So I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, man, you were like the Taysom Hill of Gannon University, my man. So
yeah, it was fun, no question. We had a lot of guys on that team, man, a lot of good players. Our offense, like I said, was pretty stacked, pretty loaded, and it was a very fun year, no question.
Yeah, for sure. So, that kind of, making that move to wide receiver kind of opened up some pro opportunities for you. So as you just mentioned, what kind of pro interest did you have right after college? And do you feel you would have had those same opportunities if you hadn't switched positions?
Good question, man. Like I said, I'm very hard-headed. I really think I can do anything I put my mind to. And I thought I did a lot of good things at quarterback. I don't know if I would have been playing in the pros at quarterback, whether it be CFL, AFL, had an NFL shot. I really don't. Like I said, I was always a good 40 runner and quick, but it definitely was an easier route, to try to play at the next level was receiver. And how that kind of happened was, going into that last year, did I have pro aspirations? I think everybody who plays college football thinks that, man, maybe I can play in the pros. But at the time, I was worried about catching every pass in spring ball. I was worried about catching and putting my yards together and in the regular season. I was not worried about trying to play in the pros. And really how it happened was, there was a PSAC pro day, and it was held at a place in Pittsburgh. And I was, Coach Ruzicki allowed me to go. I was one of a couple Gannon guys. I think Foster Resner might have went, a DB for us, and we had some guys there. And I went, and I think I ran a 4.44 or very fast 40 time. And that kind of, I think, I didn't hear much after that combine, but my agent reached out to me and said, I talked to a guy that was there, and he said, you were the fastest guy there. So I really think, the speed thing helped me really get a look. And from there, I went to a second pro day at Eastern Michigan. Because how the pro days work, you have to live in a radius, because Eastern Michigan's Division I school. I played in Pennsylvania, but I lived close enough to Eastern that I could go to that pro day, barring access. So I had access to that pro day. I had ran another good 40 time. And then from there, I really didn't know. I spent the next couple months hanging out with my agent, trying to figure out what the next moves were. I had interest from the Ottawa Redblacks and the CFL, but really wasn't sure where that was going to develop and where that was going to go to. And what ended up happening was I was with my agent and a couple other guys that actually played pro and play pro still. Grant Russell, who's quarterback in the AFL, and Jake Sutherland, who played in the XFL with me. We were all at my agent's house, and I got a contact, or Doc, my agent, said, "Hey, listen, Pittsburgh's going to give you a shot. They're bringing you in for the mini camp look." And I was pumped, man. I was excited. I mean, that was the first pro affiliation I had. I really didn't know what to expect, what to think. But for playing receiver 1 year and running a good 40 time, I was very fortunate, very blessed for that opportunity. And kind of that's how everything got the ball rolling. Was that offer, that mini camp invitation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that directly had to do with, once again, I give a lot of credit to Gannon and Coach Ruzicki for allowing them for me to go to that pro day, and fortunately running well and have an interest that way. So that's kind of how the ball got rolling for me.
Yeah, for sure. So as you mentioned, you kind of made some pit stops with the Steelers. You also played in the Arena Football League with the Columbus Destroyers before you finally got that shot with the XFL. What was it like, finally, getting that XFL contract and getting a chance to start games and get consistent playing time right away?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome, man. And that's been the biggest blessing, throughout my football journey was, all that stuff. You're right. We're all like pit stops, mini camp with Steelers. I was there for a few days, 8 practices or something, whatever it was. In the Arena League, I played 2 games, but they were the last 2 games of the year. You know, I was also in training camp with the Ottawa Red Blacks in the CFL, and that didn't pan out for me for whatever reason. So just to be able to get that opportunity and you're right, play and make the team was just a complete blessing. And the XFL, I'll get into it more in detail, but just the relationships built in that league has been a very, very exciting thing for me. But kind of how that happened was, you know, my agent did a good job of getting me into like the XFL head combines, you know, and they were high priority guys only. You had to be, you know, a well-known guy. Your agent had to know somebody. So I got into that combine because I think, you know, maybe my Pittsburgh connections helped. And there was like 6 or 7 of them. There were showcases, you know, 100 guys at each. And I had a good day. You know, I ran well. I had a very good shuttle time. I remember it was me and a kid named Flynn Nagel who played in the XFL for the Dallas team. We had 2 of the fastest shuttle times there, you know, and that really helped. But actually I didn't hear anything after the first draft. There was a main draft, and I remember being at home thinking I had a lot of connection with the New York Guardians at the time. And I was thinking, man, this is going to be it. I'm going to play in the XFL. You know, this is it. I'm going to watch the draft and wait for my call. It happened. And they, you know, I should have never done it because it was a tough day, man. I went through the whole draft day and really didn't hear anything. So the 2 teams I had connections with, I had some other school teams reach out. Seattle Dragons reached out. New York Guardians, I thought I was going to get drafted to. Didn't happen. And then the Washington, D.C. Defenders was Pep Hamilton, the head coach. And he lived in the Ann Arbor area for a little bit of time. So I knew of him. And he, after the draft, he was in the area working out with Cardell Jones. And I kind of was fortunate enough to have a connection, and I joined that workout. And it really started off day one. Coach Pep just wanted me catching balls. You know, didn't know really who I was, didn't trust me to run the routes. You know, just didn't know any better. And day 2, he was like, why don't you run a couple routes? You know, day 3, I remember running every single route. It was for Tyree Jackson and Cardell. They were already defenders at the time. I was not. You know, I was just a guy trying to make it, trying to get to the league, trying to take the attention of the quarterbacks and the head coach. And by the end of that week of working out with those guys, I remember Coach Pep said, listen, man, I can't promise you anything, but you have left a lasting impression. You left a good mark. You've done a lot of good things. So, you know, I wasn't expecting much, just because at that time you can't expect anything. The first draft had happened. I didn't know how the second draft was going to work. It was really just a supplemental draft. And I was actually on my way to visit people in Erie, Pennsylvania, believe it or not, the Erie connection. And I got a call from Coach Pep. You know, I remember where I was exactly at on the turnpike. And he said, you know, Tyler, I was working at a golf course at the time too, man, just trying to make ends meet. And he said, you know, you got to tell your friends at the golf course you're going on a hiatus because I just drafted you. So that's how it happened. And, you know, I was thrilled because that was the first time I've been drafted, anything like that. That was a big deal, very exciting. So then I got to minicamp, and, you know, I think any of the guys in minicamp will tell you I was probably 15 of 15 receivers that were expected to make the team. But I stayed healthy and I stayed sharp, and I caught every pass. I made it through minicamp, got to training camp, and really my time in the XFL, the way I would describe it was just learning from great players. I learned a lot from every receiver in that room. Eli Rogers, who had started for the Steelers for a bunch of games, was on our team. Malachi Dupree, close friend of mine. I mean, he was a draft pick from LSU, played in the NFL for a long time. DeAndre Tompkins played at Penn State. The list goes on and on at the receivers that helped me out, that kind of took me aside and said, listen, you're a good athlete. You just don't have the reps, that knowledge at receiver, and we want to help you out. You know, so those guys really, you know, without their embrace and the relationships we developed, I don't know if I would have made the team. You know, that's the reality. And I played really well in training camp. And I remember Coach Bob, my receiver coach, you know, he said, at the end of the day, when it got to the meeting of who we were going to keep and who we were going to cut, your name came up, and they said, we honestly couldn't afford to lose you because you just did everything right. I caught every pass. I was on time for everything, caught every pass, ran the route the correct way. Everyone knew where I was going to be. They could throw me the ball safely. You know, I separated well. And I actually had, I think, 6 or 7 catches in the preseason game, which was a big deal for me. So I made the team, and boom, you're right. Just like that, I went from being 15 of 15 on the minicamp roster to, you know, 1 or 2Z in week 1. And I ended up playing a decent amount of receiver. I started on every special team, and we beat the Seattle Dragons on ABC for the XFL opener. Man, there was nothing like that. That was a very special day. And then the same thing, played 2 more games, got sent to Team 9, got brought back to the DC team, and by week 5 was ready to play again, and the league folded, or because of COVID, got shut down. So it happened so fast. So I've had nothing but time now since the league didn't go in 21 to kind of reflect and just think about how everything had happened and how fortunate I've been. But it's been, it's been a blessing, and I'm a big fan and believer in the XFL. If it comes back, great. If it doesn't, at least I've had that experience and developed those relationships.
Yeah, and it's looking like it's going to come back with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson owning it
Right.
now,
No
so
question.
it's looking
No
good.
question.
So that leads us. You mentioned a bunch of great guys you played with, so you got to break it down for us, man. Who's the best player you've ever played with and against, if you can name it? If you have to name a
Yeah.
couple, I guess that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, all those XFL guys were top tier guys. I mean, Raheem Moore was a second round draft pick. Matt Elam was a first round draft pick. Guys on my team that, I've said it before, I was going against guys that, they were first and second round draft picks every day. And my job was, you got to separate, got to win. If I don't win on this release, if I don't win on this catch, then I might not make it to tomorrow. I mean, that's how pro football is. So to be able to do that all the time, I just give a lot of credit, honestly, to the PSAC and to the GLIAC, because people say what they want about Division II football. If I didn't have those reps against great DBs in the PSAC, great DBs on our team, then I wouldn't have been ready to go against the best of the best in the XFL and in the NFL. So I got, tons of respect for those XFL, NFL guys, best players I've ever played against and with. But I got to give shout outs to a couple guys. One, I mean, Marcus Jones was our running back at Gannon. I'm sure you're familiar with him, but he was the best player, I've ever played with. And I think a lot of guys on that team will tell you the same thing. I like to take a lot of credit, honestly, in our success at Gannon my senior year, but the reality is without Marcus, it wouldn't have worked. I mean, the dude ran for 2,000 yards. He was a freak. He was a beast, and we lived together actually our junior year. I think it was his sophomore year. So I spent a lot of time with Marcus, very close with him, and he was the man. He was the man out there. He did a great job. He was second in the Division II Heisman in the Harlem Hill. He was the reason our offense went. So I got nothing but respect to show for Marcus. And the best player I've ever played against was actually when I was a starting quarterback at Saginaw Valley. I was a redshirt freshman starting against Grand Valley, and a guy by the name of Matt Judon, who plays for the Baltimore Ravens, was playing D-line. And I remember that first. Everyone knew who he was. We game planned for him. It was Matt Judon. He was a beast. But he lit me up. I completed a 5-yard out, but he lit me up and kind of let me know he was going to be there all day. And we ended up getting beat, but he was probably the best player I've ever played against. And I would say that includes all those great DBs, all those great players in the XFL too.
Yeah, rightfully so. My man's doing his thing in the league.
No question. Yeah, no question. He was a beast, man.
Yeah, so you played quarterback, you played running back, you played receiver. What do you love the most, throwing touchdowns or catching them?
I'll tell you what, quarterback, like I've said before, was a lot of fun. I'm a spotlight guy, believe it or not. I don't know if you know that about me yet, Mike. I like being in the spotlight. I like I like all that stuff, man. That's how I grew up. My dad was always the coach, very well-known guy. I liked being the quarterback. I liked being well-known. But the reality is that position, and anybody will tell you, is a lot of stress. So I'd say that's a tough one. I'd say there's joy, a lot of joy when you throw a 40-yard touchdown pass or a big completion like that on 3rd and 10. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good one. I would have to say the quarterback position. When you throw a touchdown pass, you just feels like, everything kind of worked out. Just the game plan worked out, the play worked out, and you're directly responsible. We're at receiver. I'm not going to say it's the easiest position in college football and pro football, because it's not, but it's not as difficult as quarterback. You just got to catch the rock. And if you're fast and you're quick and you're a good route runner, good things will happen. So I'd say quarterback, throwing a touchdown pass, probably nothing like it. But with that being said, catching a ball, running the ball, getting the end zone, all very special too.
Yeah, for sure. So how are you kind of staying ready during this pandemic for your next opportunity?
Kind of the next thing is, you're just in constant communication with your agent. You're hoping to get an NFL workout, hoping to get back on somebody's radar. I was pretty confident after the XFL season and the kind of the season I had and the things I did in that year that, maybe I would have another shot pretty quickly in the NFL. Didn't happen, but that's okay. It is what it is. It's part of pro sports. COVID kind of hurt a lot of different things. So right now it's just staying in shape. I actually work at a gym up here in Michigan that allows me to do that. It's been a great fit for me. So I stay in shape. I try to get in contact with NFL teams via my agent, and my dad actually does a lot for me too, to try to get NFL workouts, try to stay sharp, try to get back in the CFL a little bit here and there. And just really, I'm waiting on the next thing. Like a lot of guys in my situation, they're really just waiting on the next thing and hoping for the best. And, in the back of there's XFL 2022 coming up. But you probably got to play somewhere in 2021, or at least stay in the best shape to be ready for that, or more NFL workouts. So I'd just say that. I'd say, always on the phone, always in conversations, Just hoping to hear something, hoping to get a workout, hoping to get another look is the reality.
Yeah, for sure. So, you kind of mentioned how, the XFL, I had to shut down a little bit early this past year due to COVID and everything. So what was like your kind of initial reaction, and how did you kind of find out that your season was no longer going to be played?
Yeah, that's a good question. My roommate was named Nick Brissett, and he was the starting running back at LSU when Joe Burrow was a junior, and we developed a close relationship. And I remember we were just in our room, and it was right before practice, week 5 of the XFL, and practice was at 6 a.m. It was right before we went to bed, and we just saw that the NBA had suspended. And as soon as we saw that, I think all of us kind of thought, man, that's probably the direction pro sports is going. Probably going to be us too. And I think it was that next day we had a team meeting, pretty urgent one, that said, listen, we're suspending, we're shutting down. We will play in 3 or 4 weeks. We just have to gauge the pandemic. Obviously, that never happened. And we got sent home. We were on a flight really that next day back home. I flew into Detroit. It was a weird time. It still is a very, very bad time with the pandemic. But at the time, you just didn't know how big it really was. So I was a member on the plane. I was afraid to touch anything. I didn't really know what was going on. And since it's been unfortunate, that the whole league has not collapsed, but because of COVID, has to reset in 2022. But like I said, the one positive, it's allowed me to kind of reflect on what had happened, because it happened so fast from mini camp to training camp, really to draft day too, that I really hadn't had the amount of time to kind of process what was going on and how I made that happen. And, so that's been the biggest thing. Got to spend tons and tons of time with the family. Like I said, I ended up coaching high school football again with my dad up in Saline. He's the head coach. And those have been the very positive things in a COVID thing that's not very positive altogether. So I'd say that's how I found out, and kind of that's where we're at with it right now.
Yeah, one more question for you, Tyler. Any advice for the young athletes out there chasing their professional football dreams?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is, it's very cliche, but the young guys out there and girls got to listen. I mean, the reality is anything is possible if you set your mind to it. I mean, like I said, as a senior, I never would have thought that I would be playing receiver. Had a shot with the Steelers, been in the NFL a little bit, played in the CFL, get drafted in the XFL. But the reality is, I'm a big proponent, and this comes from my dad and everyone in my family, that the cream will always rise to the top if you put yourself in a good position, and B, you have to just take everything one day at a time. I think too many people will try to look ahead too far, and then they miss opportunities, and they miss things that are happening right now that will set them up for the future. So that's my biggest thing, man. You got to take one day at a time. You got to get better. You got to get yourself in a rhythm where the only thing that matters is today. You can dream, you can have those aspirations, but if you're not doing something daily to get yourself closer to those dreams, that's going to be the problem for you. So really anything is possible is my point. You just got to really set your mind to it. You have to understand realistically what you can do to get there, and do it, because the only one that can really stop you is yourself. And that's my firm belief, man. So that's what I would say. You can do anything you set your mind to. You just got to take it a day at a time.
Yeah, for sure. Tyler Palka, ladies and gentlemen, former Gannon wideout, all that good stuff. We'll be
go Knights.
Yeah, we'll be tuned into your journey for sure, man. I appreciate you hopping on the show today.
No problem, Mike. I appreciate your time. And next time I'm in the Erie, man, we're going to get a picture together and we're going to hang out a little bit. No question.
Hey, sounds good to me. Take care.
All right, Mike.